Hey, we're live.
Everyone thinks because you're a zombie, you don't know good coffee. Well, they're wrong. There's only one brew that gets my seal of approval. Deadly Grounds coffee is my guilty pleasure. The aroma is so intoxicating. It brings all of my neighbors out of the woodwork. Deadly Grounds coffee. Coffee to die for and zombie approved. It's good to get a little deadly. Use the front door! Oh, they're so disgusting.
The Dorkening and all affiliated shows are not intended for anyone under the age of 18. The following may contain discussions or scenes that have adult situations, graphic violence, nudity, strong sexual content, and graphic language. This show is intended for mature audiences only. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, 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 and welcome back to Unprinted Pages. Hey, Tom Dog, nice to see you. Today, I get the gift of having Josh and Heather Daughrity of Watertower Hill Press and two of their awesome authors, Rebecca Cuthbert, and John Cady. Welcome to the show, guys. Nice to have you.
Thank you.
So, I think my first question is, what is your favorite trope to read and your favorite trope to write, and are they different? Heather.
Oh God, start with me. No, I don't know if I have specific tropes. I like ghost stories, and I like to write ghost stories. I'm a big fan of psychological horror, like creeping, slow dread, more than in your face, grossness. And that I both like to read and write that. I grew up reading that kind of stuff, and it's comfort reading and writing to me.
Awesome. And Heather's my stepsister's name, so it automatically came off my tongue. And Josh, what about you?
What do you like?
So I write fantasy and sci-fi. I weirdly interweave a lot of my own interests, like engineering and mechanics and stuff, like guy stuff, into my books. However, I can't technically say I have a favorite genre to read. I love the written word in ways I can't even explain. I've read hundreds of thousands of books in my life, went through my whole high school library. But fantasy has always been my dessert read. It's been my go-to when I need some comfort, right? A little feel good, even if it's dark. So I would say, yeah, I tend to write what my favoriteest thing to read. Yeah.
That is awesome. Rebecca?
So very much like Heather, I also love ghost stories. I love all Gothic tropes. So like anything that's in like a spooky old building, anything where we have a lot of secrets in the past that are, sort of coming to bear on the present moment. And there's a person, usually a female protagonist, who has to sort of figure it out or else. So that's one of my favorite things to read. And I do write that sometimes, but I think that my writing is sort of all over the place. Like I write like literary speculative stuff, but then I write like ridiculous comedy horror and like just anything in between. So yes, I write it sometimes, but not all the time, and maybe not even often.
Okay. John?
So I am kind of all across the board, but mostly like young adult, like almost anything. I just like. I think maybe it's because I'm a high school teacher, but and a majority of the books that I read with my students are young adult. But it's one of those things where especially, I usually like the author's voice a lot in young adults, no matter what I'm reading. And Josh is gonna kill me for this, but I
You
gotta
bring
bring
up
it up.
Catcher in the Rye, I'm gonna kill you.
I gotta bring it up every time. Catcher in the Rye,
Oh,
that's my favorite of all time. So that's the book that as a writer I've been chasing for a while. Just not necessarily not the story, but like that kind of voice. I've been chasing that for a while. So that's my favorite kind of voice. That's why I always bring that book up. But that's the basically young adult. Anything young adult I'll read. And I've gotten into a lot more of the like fantasy lately, especially now that I'm specifically writing in the fantasy and young adult fantasy in general.
Okay.
Don't you?
no, I don't hate Catcher in the Rye. Let me explain. I was a
Pretty
boy.
sure he hates
No. I was a boy growing up in West Texas, and I did speech and debate, and everybody for like my junior to senior year took parts of that book out to read during extemporaneous reading and stuff. However, I didn't catch enough of it to know what the book was about, right? It was always the speeches, the soliloquies, or whatever. And so I finally sat down as a boy from West Texas to read it about some rich kid who didn't want to go to his house or his penthouse in New York City. So he wandered around with his existential crisis as a teenager. And I can't do it.
He hates that book.
I hate the book.
Said.
I hate the book.
How dare you?
But I'm an orphan that got put into a group home in West Texas. Come on. I hate it because I would love to live it. I guess.
That makes perfect sense. Okay, my next question is, do you guys feel like you have found your stride as an author, or are you still trying to your voice?
That's a good question.
That is a good question. And I think yes, but I think part of why is because I realized you don't have to have just one voice. Like you can do more than one thing. I've got children's books coming out, and those are very different than my novels, and those are very different from like poetry and short story collections. And so I think that you can have fun, and I think you can do what you want to do, and I think you can you don't necessarily have to have like this one voice or this one subgenre or this like one vibe that you specialize in. You can have several that you're good at, and I think that that has helped me be comfortable writing in multiple voices.
Thank you. That is awesome. That is a great answer. What about you, John?
I love what you just said. That's a lot of that same feeling, but also now that I'm writing a series, like now I finally like I would write individual pieces before, individual like standalone like novellas and whatnot. But now that I'm writing that series, now I feel like I really found my I'm always saying it wrong. I always say it wrong. My niche or my Heather, how do I say it?
A niche?
Niche?
Yes.
Niche.
Whatever. I don't know. But I found that thing. And so,
we all go to Heather. Every single one of us. Like, what's that word? How do you say that?
Exactly. And the bad thing is I'm an English teacher and I'm asking her that. That's one of those words I've always I've given up on. So, but because I'm writing that series now, I kind of found my home within that genre and within that voice. So
that is so cool. I love that. What about you, Josh? Do you mind being called Josh?
You can call him Josh. You can call him.
What do I say? Just don't call me late for dinner?
Yeah.
Have I hit my stride? So
have you found your voice?
Or found my voice?
Full stride and voice, same thing.
Yeah. God, I wish people understood. Like everybody knows the story of what I did, right? I turned down a traditional publishing contract. I'm writing this series. It's over 500,000 words already. I have so many notes and ideas and first couple of chapters for books after the missions. But I'm writing, I make little jokes here and there, but like I'm writing a horror book right now just so my wife would respect me because that's her genre, not mine. I told myself a long time ago, I never wanted to be pigeonholed into a single genre. Like I cannot do that. And so like the missions, every book is a different genre. And I did that on purpose and people hate it. They hate it, but that's okay.
I love it.
we're blazing that trail, doing it that way. But as far as hitting my stride, 7 novels in, I have a good kind of way to write, and I can knock them out pretty quick. If that's what you mean, and finding my voice, absolutely. Like I had one of the biggest names in the book industry read some of my books, and actually told me that I write in an actual style that has a name, and I had no idea until I went. But Hemingway coined iceberg writing, which is basically it's not what you write, it's what you don't write. And most of an iceberg is under the water, and that's how my writing is. I had no idea, and then I went and picked up a bunch of Hemingways, and absolutely 100%. It's how I think, it's how I write. So if that's my voice, absolutely 100%, I've found my voice.
I agree, and I agree with no pigeonholing. What about you, Heather?
I think I knew my own voice as far as writing horror very early on, because I had a very specific kind of horror I like to read, and I wrote in that specific way, which is very much like Rebecca, because Rebecca and I are long lost twins, I've decided. I grew up on the Gothics, old school Victorian sort of writing. So my writing has that feel to it. It's very old school. It's very atmospheric. It's very slow burn. I do tend to make people cry with my writing. I didn't set out to do that, but it is a thing apparently, because while it is horror, I try to touch on all the emotions people feel. I guess you'd say the negative emotions, the pain and the sadness and the grief and the anxiety and stuff. And I really try to put that into everything. When I'm writing something, I don't really sit down and think, what is the story? I think, what is the feel of the story before anything else? What is my main character's emotional state? What are they going through? How does everything that happens make them feel? Or if I need to get them from feeling this to feeling this, what needs to happen there? So that's really kind of my thing. But my next project is not horror at all. It is, what'd you say, like modern fantasy kind of thing with witches. It's like,
also, you have to know something about my wife. She loves, like she said, the negative feelings and invoking that in
terrible
readers. However, I will say she's about to start her own company and is available for children's birthday parties. And
no, but my series that I'm just starting, it's kind of
it's an urban fantasy.
It's got to feel like Alice Hoffman's Practical Magic series. It's witches and unrealistic things in the real world.
Urban fantasy.
It is urban fantasy, but it's also very, female centric. It's a lot about, mothers and daughters and aunts and friendship and sisters, and like witchy books tend to be.
Yeah, and we're getting on the new adult bandwagon on a lot of these, just to explode that genre and the understanding of what new adult is. So we're really excited about that.
That is awesome. What is the one thing you want authors to know going into writing?
God.
John?
What do I want authors to know going into writing? Don't doubt yourself. Don't sit there and think, oh, I'm not going to be able to do that. Or there's too many people that I've spoken to that they're like, oh, I don't know how you guys do that. How you can fill like an entire book of, just write like 60,000 words, and that's not even like that long of a book. But it's one of those things where they're already counting themselves out. And they were already saying, oh, I don't have that kind of discipline. Well, you don't have that kind of discipline because you might not have tried that kind of discipline yet. But that kind of discipline is just, like I've told Josh recently, I said, when my wife and kids go to bed at night, I write for about an hour. That's not, like, when you put it like that, it doesn't seem like it's a lot of hard work, or not hard work, but like, it doesn't seem like it's unreachable, unobtainable. So I always, people say I'd love to write, but I just don't have, no, not even, they'll say stuff like, I don't have the time, or I don't have the discipline. It's like, the time is 1 hour. Like for me, it's 1 hour a day. That's plenty of time, and it's like not that much time in general when you really look at it. So it's one of those things. Like I would tell writers never count yourself out, because also I've been trying my hand at this for like 25 years, and now just within, since I met Josh and Heather, since that happened, this is when it's finally taken off. So you got to keep at it. For some people it happens overnight, but for some people, but even overnight could look like 1 month. But like for most people, it doesn't take, it isn't an overnight thing. So you just got to be able to work at it.
I agree.
It's
what about
reachable.
You, Rebecca? Oh, sorry.
Oh no, I'm just saying it's reachable. You just got to work at it.
So kind of jumping off what John said, and a plug for me is I wrote a whole book on becoming a writer. So Creep This Way, How to Become a Horror Writer with 24 Tips to Get You Ghouling is full of advice from me, and also just vignettes about all the ways I failed and where I kind of went wrong along the way and how I got myself back on track. What I have now has been 20 years in the making. So I think that, kind of going off what John said, you do have to believe in yourself, but confidence comes from learning and it comes from skills. Arrogance is empty, right? Like arrogance is built on nothing. But if you have confidence, it's because you put in the time, you learned everything you could from everyone you could, you saw everything as a growth opportunity, and you kind of shut your mouth and you listened more than you talked. And that's how you become a good writer.
I love that. And I want to read that. That is on my plan of things to read.
I'm going to send that to you.
Oh, yay! And I'm going to become better because I'm going to weigh in just really quick on this question. I already know I am not on Heather's level, but I know I am trying to get better.
None of us.
Yeah, I have published ghost stories as well. And yours, from everybody I've heard and what little I've read, are amazing. So, please remember, no, I'm not on that level yet, but I'm still trying to learn. And by reading theirs and this wonderful book, I'm going to get better because I will have a better taste of how it can run and what can happen. Okay, Heather?
Oh God, I probably have so much advice. It's not even funny. My first thing that I tell people all the time is writers have to be readers. Reading good literature, all kinds from all time periods, gives you an understanding of how language should flow and how stories should flow. And I would say even take notes as you read, because if you read enough, especially if you're reading in the same genre, you'll begin to understand and recognize things that authors do to make stories flow and to pull things together. And you'll recognize different authors doing the same things over and over. And you're like, oh, I should do that. My second thing is, please just write. Do not try to make a perfect first draft, because nobody does. I'm an editor. Rebecca's an editor. I guarantee you, we change our own drafts. God only knows how many times from the first writing till it goes to print. Don't worry about being perfect. Just sit down and get the story out, and then you can edit and revise and have an editor help you. And that is my other thing that I always push for, which is please let an editor help you, because that is our jobs. We actually enjoy it. I promise you, we enjoy helping you make your story better. Get your story down, and then let somebody help you make it perfect.
That is awesome. What about you, Josh?
Oh, I'm the asshole of the group, so I'll give an a-hole answer. No, I was going to say the whole just get the story on paper, worry about re-editing and second and third drafts. That's basic. These people that sit down and think that a sentence has to be perfect the first time, that's ludicrous, and you'll never finish your book. So just put the story down on paper. You have plenty of time to revise it. But I'm going to say something that's going to be a little controversial. However, I wish more people knew this and followed this. And I run into it now that now that I'm the owner and publisher at a pretty successful publishing company. I wish I had a nicer way to say this. Not everybody should be writers. Not everybody has the gift, right? And I think Stephen King said it in On Writing. You can make a good writer, an okay writer good, or maybe a bad writer somewhat okay. You will never make a good writer great, and you'll never make a bad writer good. And if you don't have a natural talent for it, and I know this is an a-hole thing, but there's so many manuscripts we get with a whole lot of, Rebecca called it confidence. I call it, what is that? There's a thing that says that when you don't know hardly anything, your confidence is really high. And when you know a whole lot, your confidence is really low. And I get a lot of submissions from people that are like, this is the next big, huge thing. And it's hardly put together at all. There's no plots, there's no ending, there's all kinds of strings missing and stuff. So I would say know your abilities. Know if you have the gift to tell a story, if you have a gift to put it on paper. If you failed English in high school, maybe it's not your thing. Now I'm not here to squelch anybody's dreams. You have to have a very thick skin to be in this industry. However, I hate to be the guy that says maybe writing's not for everybody, right? Everybody thinks it's a way to make a quick buck. And if you're in it for the money, you're never going to sell a book. So definitely know your abilities, know your shortcomings, be humble enough to know where you fell at. And like my wife said, have editors help you every step of the way. Put the story on paper, revise it and redraft it as many times as you want, give it to an editor. And then if it's not your thing, take that as sometimes gospel. Maybe your thing is something else, right?
Yes, and I agree with Robert as well. You're not an a-hole, at least not in our relationship so far. And I agree. Some people are extremely talented.
Talent. I'm never going to try out for Major League Baseball. I'm not a Major League Baseball player, right? I could be incredibly passionate about Major League Baseball and think, man, coach, put me in, we'll win state, right? I don't have that talent. That's not one of my talents. I can write 8 novels in 2.5 years, right?
Mm-hmm. And so, that is amazing. 8 novels in 2.5 years.
Wait, I'm sorry, what?
Hold on. I was throwing numbers. Okay, well, 5, 6, 7, and it'll be coming up on 4 years since I started.
All right, whatever.
So 7 novels in 4 years. I apologize. I lied.
You exaggerated.
Okay.
However, we have created 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 15 novels this year. So
holy cow.
From other people's stories. Yeah.
That is amazing. All those amazing authors making so many books with you guys.
Yeah, they're good. They're good. We have the #1 thriller right now in the Pell Light in pre-orders. John Katie's young adult fantasy hasn't left the top 10 till this week.
Left this week?
For 5 months, it hasn't left the top 10 until this week. Paperbacks finally hit 11. John, you're failing us now.
It's all downhill from here.
Yeah, it's all downhill.
Just in
time to put out #2.
Exactly. Gotta get back in there.
Yeah, we have been, and I tell people all the time, we've been incredibly blessed with a whole lot of success this year because we worked in the dark for 4.5 years building this thing, figuring it out, not trying to make the money, trying to figure out the culture and the standards and the SOPs and everything. And how do we get books into Barnes & Noble and BAM and Walmart and Target, figured all that out. And that's where we are now. So.
BAM?
Books A Million.
Books A Million.
Oh, okay. I don't have one around here. I never actually think about Books A Million. Okay. Are you going to finish your TBR in your lifetime? Rebecca?
No. The bookshelf behind me is like 10% read. And I'll buy more books next week. And that's just the way it goes, and that's fine. I do want a bunch of our Watertower Hill authors' books. So it's like Obscene Folklore is on my list real soon. Excited about that one, Face in the Grave. So I'll add them and maybe I'll read them. You know, they look wonderful. And I always think, because I teach college classes, and I think, like over the summer, I'll really make a dent in those books. No, I'm not going to make a dent, because for every book I read, I'm going to buy 4 more. Mm-hmm. And my husband's the same way. So our house is just overloaded with books. They're in every room, and they're just stacked in piles on the floor because we've run out of shelf space.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody else has this problem. When I started writing, my reading time went way down. And also, as I got further into writing 2, 3, 4 novels and getting out into the industry, I can't write with my old eyes. I mean, I can't read with my old eyes. I can't just sit there and read for entertainment anymore. I'm looking at the formatting, the sentence structure, the white space of the page. I'm looking for errors. I'll read. I mean, I've got so much ego now. I'll read like a Stephen King or a John Grisham and be like, I would have done that different, So I cannot read the same way I used to. I don't find the same enjoyment in it anymore. And what I really do now is just go back and just read some of my biggest loves, right? My old Anne McCaffrey's and the Pern series and stuff. Or, I don't read much new anymore. So to answer your question, no, I'm never going to read my TBR.
Heather?
I have a very sad story.
Oh, yeah.
So back in the day, I used to post these pictures of my home library, which was actually in my bedroom because it was this huge room. And I had 8 6-foot-tall bookshelves at one end of the room.
Several thousand books. Yeah.
Full of books.
Alphabetical order.
Oh, yes.
By
Totally
genre.
organized. So when my ex-husband and I divorced, we all left a lot of stuff in the house at first, and everybody moved out, and he took it upon himself to go in and throw everything away in a giant dumpster. So all my thousands of books are now at the dump. So that whole thing that would have been my TBR, enough to last a lifetime, is gone. So I guess I'm starting a new stack. I had like 3 boxes of books that I had with me that he didn't get to. But even with that, yeah, as Josh said, I hardly have time to read just for pleasure anymore. I'm constantly either reading what I'm editing or reading submissions or writing my own stuff. I very rarely have time to just sit down and read anymore. When I was a reviewer, I read about 150 books a year, and now I'm like lucky if I get a dozen books a year that are not a book that I'm working on in some way. Now, I do go through a lot of books in the editing process and stuff too, so that does count as reading, I guess. Yeah. But just reading for pleasure, by the time I'm done working all day, which is book-related stuff, I'm ready to not do books at the end of the day.
Well, and we have a lot of responsibility. Like, Rebecca, how many books have we agreed on with you? Like,
4, 5?
5.
Yeah, and now, and John, 3. Heather and I have a book or 2 coming out a year, and that's just in this room, right? We have 31 authors now at Watertower Hill that once you're in the family, I'm like, yeah, whatever you guys want to publish, we'll have to put it on the schedule. So we have a lot of responsibility, and it's hard to just sit down and read for pleasure anymore. It really is.
What about you, John?
I usually, probably never, because I read like 2 or 3 books at a time, but I don't finish any of them, and it drives my wife absolutely nuts because she'll fly through books. She's such a avid reader that she loves, I start reading books sometimes on her recommendation. Like I was reading, like, for example, I've been reading that Fourth Wing book, and then like I just can't get in. I'm like, I don't know why I can't get into it, but I'm like on page 329, but I've been reading it. She said I've been reading it for a year, which is probably accurate. So it's like one of those things where it's embarrassing that I'm not done with a book that I've been reading for a year, but it's like one of the, I'll pick up, it's like that new shiny toy. If I see a new book on the shelf, I'm like, oh, that looks cool. And then I'll forget all about the one I got at home that I'm like more than halfway through. And then I do it so often that the only books I literally read all the way through are, and Josh is going to kill me, is the old, like he said, the old books that I used to love, like I'll fly through Catcher in the Rye, and I won't not read that all cover to cover. But it's like,
you finished a couple of books recently, haven't you? I heard.
Yeah, but it's one of those things where, so I'll, like the ones from Watertower Hill, like I've been reading those, and especially Josh's, but like those I'll read cover to cover because I know the no, I guess it is because I know the author, and I want to tell them right afterwards what I thought of the book. But like a lot of the books I read, I don't know the author, so I don't feel obligated to like fly through it and then tell them, oh, that was great. So it's one of those things. And I read, like, I teach English and I teach reading, so I'm reading all day with my students. So a lot of the time when I get home, I'm not sitting down to read. I'm just like, I'm hanging out, doing whatever with my kids, wife and kids, and then I'm writing at night. So I hardly ever have time to finish a book. But I have like 2 that I'm reading right now, so I'm weird.
Yeah, I don't think I'll ever finish mine. Okay, my question for the teachers is, are you guys having trouble with Chat GPT on essays as well with your students? John?
With what?
Chat GPT.
Really not.
AI to write their assignments.
Oh, no, well, so I teach in a why am I? So my students, it's a juvenile detention center, so they don't really have too many opportunities to use AI. I feel like they maybe would if they could, but I feel like a lot of students, regardless of where they are, would probably use that. But in the particular place where I teach, that's not really an issue. So it's one of those things, like they're right in front of me. Usually the essays that I give them are based off of what we're reading, so the writing prompts I give them. So it's one of those things where they're taking everything that we've discussed in class and putting it into their, they always write the rough draft out, and then occasionally have them type it up on their Chromebook. But I'll know their notes from the paper, so it's kind of, they're not able to pull that off on me. But I could see where it would be a problem, say if I was in public school and I had maybe like 100 students.
Okay. What about you, Rebecca?
I teach college creative writing classes. So for me, I guess I don't know. It's very possible that some of my students have turned in like AI stuff. And if they did, it probably didn't get a very good grade, because we all know that AI doesn't really produce a lot of coherent narratives. It pops out pretty junky writing and stereotypical characters and situations. But it's going to be this very dorky teacher answer. But the truth is that, like, if they use it, they are cheating themselves. And then that's just like a natural consequence of bad behavior, because I'm here trying to teach young people who want to become writers. So my hope is that, and by the way, my class is all elective stuff. Now the main class I teach is Introduction to Creative Writing, and that does count as the arts requirement, but they can take one of several courses to fulfill that requirement. So my hope is always that they're there because they want to be there, because they want to become better writers. And if you want to become a better writer, you're not cheating. And if you're cheating, you're never going to get anywhere. And so that all works out too.
That makes perfect sense. In alternate school, well, I say alternate, as in other schools, some teachers are coming across children and adults wanting to use ChatGPT more than actually writing themselves. So it is nice to hear from other teachers what's actually happening, because the cool thing is all of you are different. All of you have something amazing to give these wonderful students. And luckily for all of us, you have something that you're willing to share with us in your books, and we get to enjoy and learn as well. And I also want to thank all four of you for sharing with us. Because I think I agree with what Heather said. And you're cheating yourself if you're not reading all different books of multiple areas and ages, well, eras, to strengthen your writing. And I appreciate that. My next question is, what is the one book that you have been trying to read and cannot get through?
Are we all frozen?
No, I had a slight problem. My thing wanted to fall.
The
and I
book that
didn't
I
want it to. So,
yeah
let's see. Josh, let's
yeah
go for it.
I several actually, and my wife's gonna punch me. I can't stand Margaret Atwood, so I couldn't make it past chapter 2 of Handmaid's Tale. That it's too many run-on paragraphs and Oxford commas, and I think she did it artistically, which was the wrong way to do it. The sequel was better. Brandon Sanderson's Way of Kings. My brother's gonna kill me. It's those books are 400 500,000 words each, and it's just too much. He's trying to be Robert Jordan with The Wheel of Time and having these just huge sweeping fantasies, but the world he created doesn't quite fully live up to that. I'm going to have a bunch of Sanderson fans coming after me with pitchforks, but I can't get past the third one. I want to really bad. I'm literally looking at it right now. But I have never seen a book. I've never seen a book that big. And I love books. That thing is huge. 400,000 words, and he has ghostwriters writing for him. I lost a lot of respect when I found that out. So, that's pretty much it.
That's your book.
That's pretty much it. I can't get through my own anymore. Kidding. That's it.
Well, if I answer that question, we're gonna have a talk later.
Oh, the Mistborn books?
Because
I'm gonna murder you.
He's all about oh, you only read horror, and I'm like, I've only read horror for the last several years, because it's my favorite genre, but I have read in every genre imaginable my entire life. So he's on this thing that he's convinced that I will love these fantasy series that
with the female protagonist.
So he's got me reading
same guy,
the
Brandon Sanderson, Mistborn series.
And I read the first book in this trilogy, and it took me 6 months to read
I still think you'll like the Elizabeth Hayden books.
I haven't started the second one yet because it's good, but it's not
gothic Elizabethan era horror is what it's not.
It's not even really the kind of fantasy that I prefer, because I do prefer the
darker.
No, I was gonna say I prefer the Alice Hoffman and the Deborah Harkness and that kind of female driven fantasy. And I know that Mistborn, the main character, is a girl, but it's not really.
Okay, then I'm gonna get you on the Elizabeth Hayden or Anne McCaffrey or
Okay.
Oh, I have a Nye coming, so she's amazing too. Okay. So
well, anyway, I'm trying to get through that for him, if nothing else. It's just very.
Oh, don't read the best writing that's ever been done in the history of humanity for me. What?
Well, I handed you a Ray Bradbury book a year ago, and you're on chapter 6. So
I like to read it when I'm in the bathroom.
I know you do, but you're in the bathroom way more than that, so I don't know what you're doing. You're not reading that book.
Ray Bradbury, God bless him. You think he's a horror writer? He is not.
I think that book is wonderfully horror / dark fantasy.
It's like an R.L. Stine book, but with poetry.
Anyway, let's ask somebody else.
I love that. That was amazing. Rebecca.
I feel terrible about this, and I think some people are gonna lose all respect for me because it's so short, and I've tried a couple of times, and it's I haven't said I'm never gonna finish it, but I have not yet been able to get all the way through Frankenstein. in one go. And I say that I recognize how important it is to my genre. I understand how important it is to feminism. Like, I recognize those things, and I really want to read that book. And I've tried a couple of times, and it's like wading through quicksand or something. Like, the language in it is just so very heavy.
Is it like Catcher in the Rye?
No.
Is that?
You know what I say about Frankenstein?
Dare you,
Frankenstein is a fantastic story and a terrible book.
Okay. And see, now I feel like I have Heather's approval, and Heather's like my boss. So maybe I just won't read it now.
If you could condense that story down into its basic parts, it's a great story, but my God, she's wordy.
Yep. And there's also that aspect of like, it's all epistolary, and I'm supposed to believe that like a captain on a ship who picked up a guy, right, is remembering not only what that guy said, but what people said to that guy, and writing it down word for word. And I'm just like, oh, I want to buy it and I can't buy it.
I feel like if we ever get Heather and Rebecca in the same room,
we're going to take over the world. That's what's going to happen.
It will be like the CERN super collider that they think is going to destroy the Earth. Y'all will create a black hole of awesomeness in the same room and suck us all in and destroy everything.
That could be.
Right. Whatever.
Wait, is Tobin and Dell in the same room? Do y'all live together?
They're not in
y'all?
the same room.
Y'all are both killing Dell and me.
In a good way or a bad way? We're
killing.
killing.
Their story, Miscreation, is so amazing. I can't wait to I wish I could put that out this year. I really do.
All right, we got to hear John's.
Yes, John.
The autobiography of Mark Twain, Volume 1.
I totally thought he was going to say yours for a minute.
No, I read that.
Dare you?
I read that cover to cover. No, so about last year, I was like, I completely like devoured any Twain I could get, and I read them all when I was younger, but I just was reading them again because they're so fun, and I like the way he writes. But we were at, I forget what kind of, it was one of those stores, I don't know, it was like a thrift shop almost. We were up in Maine, and I saw they had volume 1 and volume 2 of his autobiography for like, they reached like $3, and like the book that Josh just held up, it was like they were both that thick, and I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna fly through these.
He loved himself.
I'm still on like page, like a year and a half later, I'm on page 20 of the volume 1. So volume 2 is never gonna be opened by me. I'm fully convinced of that. And there is a volume 3, and
yeah,
I almost maybe have to buy it so I have them, but never read them.
I will say, and I'll never be a great man, but I don't think great men or women should write their autobiographies. I think they, like he said, you just can't get through it. Let somebody else build you up and write your story and stuff. Like I can't do it. I'll never be a great man, so I wrote my own.
I disagree.
I disagree with that. That's a conversation for another time.
Well, thank y'all for building me up. I'll send your payments right after this.
But anyway.
Are there any books you can't get through, Jen?
Me? There are a lot, but at the moment, I can't remember any of their actual names because I've been trying to figure out some of the fake war books and actually read some of the books I want to read. And I still end up reading the same 3 kid picture books over and over every day. So, yeah. Did I mention 4-year-old?
Yes.
Yeah, that'll put a damper in your adult conversations and reading list.
Oh, yeah.
The amount of times I've read Giving Tree to my kids it must be in the hundreds.
Exactly.
And then my it was wicked cute story. So my daughter, like, she thought that I wrote The Giving Tree because I had the bald head and the beard or whatever, and they had the big picture of him on the back, and I'm like, no, that's not me. Kind of weird. I wish. That guy, Shel Silverstein, was incredibly talented.
Mm-hmm. Talking about reading to kids and John talking about Mark Twain, have you ever tried to read like Huck Finn and Tom Sawyer out loud to children, it's not fun.
Why would you do that?
It's torture.
Do you like beat
It's
yourself?
torture to try to read those books out loud to kids. Don't do it.
Well, hold on a minute. So I'm writing a ghost story right now for the Hospital of Haunts, and super, super, super Kentucky accent. And you make me read that out loud. I may have to get you to read it out loud.
No, I like it because it sounds natural coming out of you.
Out of my face?
To talk with that accent and stuff. But to try to read the dialogue in Mark Twain's books out loud is just
She told the lady
exhausting.
She told the lady downstairs at the front desk, she said, I read this great line today. It said, "Your innards are showing."
Lines can be great in a lot of ways.
Give you some context. A guy died on the operating table and his ghost just stood up, and another ghost was standing there and he said, "Hey, your innards are showing." So.
That's helpful. And as for that particular subject, I just found really pretty copies for them to have to read. And then we'll talk about them when they get old enough. Because I don't know if I know for a fact the youngest, but I don't know if the two older ones are ready either. But it's on a list of books kids should read at some age, so I've been trying to collect them.
Do you think that these books that are being banned in school and certain states and stuff, do you believe that those should be like required reading now?
Some of them should be required reading because they tried to ban one of my most favorite scary story books when I was a kid, and my mom said, "Nah, here you go." And then we read them together. And then my math teacher said, "I know they said that it's not allowed in our schools, but each day of October, we're going to read one story from these books."
Which book was it?
Scary Stories.
Oh, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They absolutely tried to ban those.
Yeah. Well, I have this whole soapbox, and I tell my own kids, if they're going to ban a book, that's the book you want to read. Mm-hmm. Why are they banning it? Because they're trying to create workers, automatons, right? Robots. For God's sakes, don't use any kind of imagination or anything. So yes, please go read all the banned books. And
I agree.
Kind of a goal, isn't it? Like
the new
books banned.
Yeah. I would love to get a book banned. That would be awesome, man. That's how you get sales.
Yep.
Oh yeah, especially now you go on banned book talk and everybody will want to read it.
Yeah. I'm gonna ban my own books. That's what I'm gonna do. My books are banned. Don't read them. They're horribly imaginative and original.
Exactly.
Okay. All right.
Dude, the really cool just from the little snippets of conversation within your books, and you just made those the little slides that you can read and put those videos on TikTok of each of the books, and then just banned book and TikTok, book talk and a few other. You guys could catch a whole bunch of different readers.
I'll make up some kind of state agency that's banning all my stuff. The I don't know, men in purple suits or something.
All right, don't let Josh get off on a whatever this is.
Okay, well, I planned on reading Robert's comment and going forward. He had an English teacher that said the same thing. If it is banned, it is worth reading. Hence why I've got so many different books on the banned list. So, the next thing I think we all want to know, what is your favorite dessert?
Oh my God.
John, please tell us.
Red velvet cake. So every time there's a professional development day for all the teachers that teach where I teach, they always have the dessert tray afterwards, and like a bunch of the teachers know exactly what I'm looking for. They know I'm looking for the red velvet cake, so they kind of like almost like direct me to it. It's right over on that one, and I'm like, it'll be someone I don't think I've ever even met one of these people, but they'll be like, it's right over there, and I'm like, thank you. So it's like
What you're
that-
famous for.
That is awesome. Rebecca?
Apple pie, but it's got to be homemade. It cannot be like frozen or store bought. And I cannot eat gluten. I have celiac disease. So I had to learn how to make gluten-free pie crust so that I could have my favorite thing.
Okay. That leads a follow-up question. Are you one of the ones that puts the cheddar on top or the ice cream on top?
Neither. Don't mess with my apple pies. One of my friends called me an originalist because I got mad at people who cut up vintage tablecloths because I collect them and I'm sick of them making ugly dresses out of my vintage tablecloths. It's like, send those to my house. I will put them in a cabinet where I don't use them, but I like to look at them sometimes, you know? And so maybe I am an originalist because I don't want anything on my apple pie. Like the apple pie is the dessert. I don't want anything else on it.
That is good to know.
That was kind of a tangent. I'm sorry.
Okay, we like
I'm
him.
mad about the tablecloth thing, but yeah,
You
apple
do
pie.
know there's other things you can do with your tablecloths. You can use one to like get thin like 2x4s, or no, it's 1x1s, and then you stretch it around it, and then you make a mural on your wall, and then you can either have it as is or pin pictures on it. And that way
I
you're
wouldn't even do
using
that. I'm not
them
putting
and you can see it.
pinholes in my tablecloths.
There's clothespins.
Hey, no, Rebecca, as an old car lover, to cherry is everything. I'm an
You
originalist.
get it.
I
You
get
get
it.
it. It's
I
like,
get
you know how you see people who are like, they make jewelry out of like typewriter keys.
Mhm.
Like, to me, that's okay if the typewriter's already busted, but you don't bust a perfect typewriter to make those. Do you know what I mean?
100% know what you mean.
Yeah. So it's like, if you've got a stained up, ripped up old tablecloth, all right, and you want to make a little dress out of that, that's fine. But like, they'll take these pristine, like 1950s tablecloths and just ruin them. And it hurts my heart, and I have to block them because I don't want to see them pop up on my timeline.
I don't need that negativity in my life, Mom. You're blocked.
Yes.
What's your
Okay.
favorite?
Sorry. Dessert.
Oh, you go first.
No, you go first.
No, I
No,
have.
because I want to know what
Okay,
you.
Heather.
I know Josh's because of what he posts.
I bet you don't know mine.
You said it was snickerdoodles, and Heather makes really good
Oh.
ones.
That's my favorite cookie. So, okay, so one thing everybody needs to know. I have a stupid sweet tooth. Oh, it is bad. I got a case of candy bars in my freezer right now. I have a bad sweet tooth. It's bad. It's bad. So my favorite dessert is dessert. That's the answer I give. But I'm like Rebecca. I like the original stuff. Hot apple pie or red velvet cake, any kind of pie and coffee. I literally look. We found a place here finally. Pie and coffee. It's one of my favorite things. It's a meal to me. All pie and coffee for a meal. But yeah, dessert is my favorite dessert.
You're so weird.
Okay, that brings me to
You're
two
so
questions for Heather.
Okay.
One, what is your favorite dessert? And the other one is, would you be willing to share your snickerdoodle recipe with us for our home ec class?
Yes, I would. So I love to bake. I'm not actually a huge dessert eater. I have my entire, adult life made things and then not eaten them and just given them to other people. I do like stuff now and then, but what I like is seasonal. So like what's my favorite dessert in the summer is like lighter stuff. Like for my birthday every year, I make an orange creamsicle cake, and it's got like Cool Whip frosting, and you keep it in the fridge. It's just light and cold. But then once fall comes, I'm a big like pecan pie person. And then around Christmas time, I have to have gingerbread and ginger snap cookies and stuff. But I like to make the food more than I like to eat it. And I have like a whole no, you can't make that right now. It's June. You can't make that till November kind of mindset about baked goods, because it has to feel like it fits the season.
This woman made a whole Tupperware thing of peanut butter cookies in there today.
I did while I was editing for Hospital of Hans. I was back and forth between the oven and the computer because I don't know. I like to do more than one thing once. But I have to say, Rebecca, please don't be mad at me, because I love to go to thrift stores and antique stores and buy the old tablecloths and napkins, the embroidered ones that are all beat up and torn up and coming apart. And I do cut them into pieces, but then I make them into quilts. So I do not take perfectly good vintage tablecloths and stuff like that and mess them up. But the ones that are nobody's ever going to buy because they're just a disaster, I will cut out whatever part is still usable.
I'm good with that.
So
that makes me happy.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes me happy. I think part of why I'm so offended is I don't like the dresses that woman makes with them. But I also get mad at just about her ruining perfect things.
It's just one person, actually. Rebecca doesn't really have a soapbox. It's one chick that lives down the street
that she doesn't like.
I know the name of this person. I'm not going to say it, but I blocked her. So
I'm betting I know exactly who it is because I was watching the videos earlier and I'm like, why? That was gorgeous.
It's always the same dress too, right? Like, get another style. Get 2 styles. Why is it always the same one?
Whereas I do like Heather does. It's ripped up. It's messed up. Alrighty. I can make a stuffed pickaxe out of this. I found out I could recently because I've never made a stuffed pickaxe before. But we are a Minecraft kid and we want to make our own toys. So at least he's trying to learn how to do things. He made stuff out of popsicle sticks.
Okay. But yes, I'm glad to share my snickerdoodle recipe. They're very soft, squishy. It's actually a Mrs. Fields copycat recipe. So if you know, like the Mrs. Fields cookies, they're delicious. They disappear.
Her dad and I fight over them. He's like an inch taller than me and outweighs me. And he's 71 years old, and I'm pretty sure he can slam me into the ground. And I'm not a little guy either. So her he's a legit tough guy. And we fight over those snickerdoodles.
I do. I make like 6 dozen at a time, and literally just the 2 of them are the only ones eating them. So
we're gonna go on a Colorado trip here in a couple of weeks, and she's promised
I have to pack cookies.
She's promised like 8 dozen snickerdoodles that we're just gonna eat on the trail. So
alrighty. Whereas we have home ec class. That way it's easing them into learning how to cook. And they're learning different methods and stuff. And this last snickerdoodle recipe we found, it did not suit our likes. It seemed like their amount of sugar was a little bit too low. And their amount of butter was, their amount of wet ingredients. It came with their instructions. It came out kind of not soft like they promised. So I figured we'd find another one, and maybe we can find one that we really like, and we can test our oven on the taste part. Because if a snickerdoodle doesn't taste like a snickerdoodle, I don't want to try to figure out what our oven is doing, even if it's crunchy.
I'm not a baker, but I'll tell you this. I have to eat all the leftovers the day before she makes them, because she puts 8 dozen snickerdoodles in the fridge for an hour or 2. That's kind of a thing, right?
The dough goes in you chill the dough before you bake the cookies, yes.
So I know enough to know you have to chill the dough before you bake the cookies.
Uh-huh. Good job. I'm so proud of you.
You were incredibly condescending tonight.
I'm so proud of you.
That's it.
He knows you have to chill the dough because he sneaks into the fridge and eats the cookie dough before I have a chance to bake it. That's how he knows that.
Yeah, that's why you make multiple dozen.
She has to lock the door and tie me down to bake anything here.
Let me put it this way. When the kids aren't here, I give him the beaters to lick the cookie dough off of. So yeah.
I can clean it like something X-rated. There you go.
Not go there.
Now I want cookies.
Later.
Yes, make out the cookbook.
You could.
Let me put that on my list of things I need to do.
That's for 2028. Just
oh my god.
Right. The thing. So here's the thing. Let me just tell you the story really fast. I'll just tell you the story. I tried to bake cookies when I was a single man and had my own house. And I saw this recipe for white chocolate raspberry Christmas cookies. And I was like, I can do this. I went to the store and it was like, I needed shortening and Crisco and all this other stuff. And I'll have to show the pictures because they came out these like flat, dull, pinkish looking things that were unedible. Fast forward about 3-4 years, and my wife is like, I can bake anything with my eyes closed and half asleep. So I was like, try this recipe. Couldn't do it. She was like, came out better, more perfect than the pictures on the website. Oh no, James is here. No. They came out like, you can take a picture and put them in a magazine. This woman, she should be baking. You literally should.
I love to bake.
Be baking like for a living.
It's relaxing to me to go in the kitchen, put some music on, and just like slow baking. And then you have stuff to give people afterwards. So,
are you a good photographer?
I can take some pretty dang good pictures of baked goods. Yes.
So you already know you can make the book pretty.
That's true.
Because you can bake it, it'll look amazing, and then we can all get this wonderful Gothic cookbook in 2028 or 2029 when you can. But as you bake it and you're like, oh, that turned out really good, and just go click and already have the picture.
So, then that means that all baking could be written off as business expenses.
I'm
down. Because
it's
research for a book.
I'm down. James just said, oh no, James is here. Laugh out loud. I love it. You ever had like one of those little brothers you love to pick on and it's just love, right? If I didn't like him, I would just ignore him. But I love picking on James. He's like he asked for it. He really asked for it sometimes in the group chat. This guy, anytime anybody new comes on, like a professor in New York, Miss Rebecca Cuthbert, James goes, hi, I'm James. You can call me James for short. I'm like, dude, this is why we can't have people over. Like, we can't bring new people into the family. He's like Stewart. Anybody seen, what was it? Mad TV, Stewart?
Yeah.
James is Stewart. If you want to know my love for James, he's Stewart.
Okay.
You know what I'm talking about?
No.
You don't, nobody here knows Stewart from Mad TV?
I do.
Us old guys, we know it. Tell me I'm wrong, John. Is James not Stewart?
There's some Stewart there. Yeah.
Thank you.
What is the one book you want all young readers to read that you loved when you were younger? Rebecca.
When I was younger or like in general?
It can be in general or younger.
One of the best books that I have ever read. I've got two answers too. So a couple of the best books I've ever read. And they're not horror, but one of them has aspects, I think, of horror, but one of them is Waterland by Graham Swift. And the other one is The Shipping News by Annie Proulx. It is so, so, so good. And there are creepy parts and there are funny parts. I just think like The Shipping News kind of does a little bit of everything. There's a love story in it. There's trauma, there's scary stuff. So good. The Shipping News. Read The Shipping News.
Okay. John?
These are books I read, like the ones I loved when I was a kid, you said?
Yeah, any one or two?
So
more than 5?
I remember reading Bunnicula a lot.
Oh, I love
I loved that book. The sad thing is I really can't tell you what it's about nowadays, but I know I read it like 5 times when I was a kid. I loved it. I mean, I know the general gist of it, but it's like one of those things when one of my students asked me like a similar question, and I was like, "Oh, Bunnicula," and they're like, "Oh, what was that about?" And I'm like, "So a rabbit." And then I kind of, like, it was one of those things where I went to describe it, and I'm like, I can't believe I can't really fully describe this. I used to read it all the time. I loved it, and so that, and I like Treasure Island.
Okay, those are great choices. Josh?
Yeah, I don't want to look like a sexist or anything, but I feel like I know books for boys and girls to become men and women. I'm of that age where I don't think that there's anything wrong with being a man, and I don't think there's anything wrong with being a woman. And I think we were shown a lot of literature. Those of us that are in our 40s and 50s, we were shown some literature in the 70s and 80s that probably influenced us more than we realize. And so some very, very important books to me when I was a little boy are like Jack London books, and then like My Side of the Mountain, even in Hardy Boys and stuff like that, very male centric. How do you solve problems? How do you survive? How do you protect and take care of smaller things or people and stuff? And for women, even though it's a book that I read every year and still cry every year, was Catherine Patterson's Jacob Have I Loved. It's a Newbery Award winning book. It's because she wrote Bridges to Terabithia and got better known for some of those books. But Jacob Have I Loved is a story that I can't even explain it. It's about these two twin sisters before World War II that grew up on a little island in the middle of the Chesapeake, and just their entire journey from childhood to adulthood, and how they both ended up different than how they thought it was going to be, and that kind of coming to age. Forget the whole boy and girl thing. I think everybody should read Jacob Have I Loved.
Your favorite middle grade book is very female centric.
It's incredibly female centric, and I just, the whole coming of age trope, I don't think kids today get that benefit of some of the stuff that we read, like Treasure Island, Smith Family Robinson, some of these older classics that taught lessons that I hate to really sound my age here, but I think are so key in today's world of super fast digital, look up every piece of information at your fingertips, AI stuff. I think knowing how to do a campfire, how to keep yourself alive in a winter, how to take care of animals and your younger siblings and stuff. Look out for the little guy. We're losing a lot of those life lessons.
That is why they're on the shelf.
I'm sorry?
That is why those books are on the bookshelf. So
Yeah.
I can help them.
For kids, yeah.
Yep. It's important. And I think children, more than anything else, are sponges for a diet of what they ingest, be it TV, music, everything else. And I'm not a big fan of telling children what they are and who they are. I am a big fan of showing children history and lessons on doing things the right way, even especially because normally the right way is the hardest way, and not to take life lazily, or else you're not going to get anywhere.
I agree. Now I'm curious about Heather.
Well, you got on to me for being stupid earlier, so I needed to pull out me.
Be smart. Okay. No, okay. When I was a kid, there were two books that I read over and over, and I tell people all the time, this is where my love for Gothic literature started. So just bear with me, because it's A Little Princess and The Secret Garden. And people are like, that's not Gothic horror. And I'm like, it's not Gothic horror, but it's absolutely Gothic, where the house, the location is a character in itself, and it's dark and creepy, and you've got a young female, heroine who goes into this big creepy house with all these dark places and secrets, and it's very much child Gothic literature. It absolutely is, and I loved it. And I always loved the idea of being in these old houses with these long dark corridors and these secret rooms, and I love it. They're definitely, I would say, very much girl books. I have 5 kids, and certainly my boys never had any interest in those when my girls did. That's whatever. I also love, as far as kids books, young reader books go, I love Tuck Everlasting. Makes me cry every time. But also, in a completely different vein, I think all young people between like the ages of 10 and 13 should read Ray Bradbury's The Halloween Tree, because that is the best Halloween book ever. And it's got so much actual history in it, the history of what we now know as the holiday of Halloween. but it is a book that you could be sitting outside in the Oklahoma August heat and you read that book and you swear you are in dark, cold Halloween night sky, you know, flying from one place to another. It so puts you in that perfect, dark, spooky. It's good.
Yeah,
Read it.
It is incredibly interesting. Well, we are 100% products of our diet. What we ingested as children, what we read, what we watched, what we saw. And I can even see it in my own siblings. I read differently than my brother did, and we are two completely different people now. Yeah, looking back, we can see even in our 40s and stuff, aspects of our base personality formed by the literature given to us as children. So this is a very important question you asked. What would we tell young people to read? Because I don't think the understanding is there that you can fully form a child's future by the books that you give them to read. It's incredible. And it's not just books, right? This has been all of human history, the passed down spoken stories in the language and stuff. It's how we become who we are. And man, I could sit here and talk about that forever. You just totally nailed it.
I could. I mean, I homeschooled 5 kids for 20 years. If it's a children's or young adult book that's been out there at any point, I've probably read it or one of my kids has read it. I love reading with kids, to kids, seeing what kids like to read. It's a very big thing for me.
I did not expect to be like, okay, Heather, those, I agree on all those. I have all of those. And yes, that is so cool that I have the ones that Josh and Heather have suggested. I am going to have to get the ones that Rebecca and John have suggested now, because I'm like, okay, they're teachers. I definitely we collectively will have to read them.
Well, not only that, one of the things that I'll put my Watertower Hill hat on for a minute, because I didn't want to stay a specific genre or age group imprint. It's incredibly important to me that we signed middle grade books this next year, right? Our very first book to publish other than ours was young adult, was John's book. We are bastions of wisdom when it comes to books and literature and stuff, but even more so how important it is to keep books in the world, put good literature out into the world, but also to teach the understanding that the newest Netflix show or the newest trending cable television show, not a lot of great education in that, but I can give you 150 book ideas that could literally change people's lives. And that's why to me books are so important. They're my entire life for that very reason. And it almost goes back. My daddy was a pastor. He was a preacher. I watched him in the pulpit tell stories, right? He told biblical stories, but he told stories too. So it's in my blood as well. And my mom was also a writer. So there's no more important, other than my faith, there's no more important thing than books and the lives that can be changed by a book.
My next question to both the teachers are, when you teach books every year, is it always the same list, or do you change it up as you go through, or do you have like a master list of all the books that you would like to teach as you go through your teaching career? I know that's multiple questions. John?
So we have certain themes that we have to cover. Like there's we have the 4 seasons, so there's a different theme for each of those seasons. So they encourage us to just try a different book, and they always give us so they'll send us like a big box from Barnes and Noble of like I don't know how they phrase it, but higher order thinking books, I guess. I think that's how they phrased it. And so it's books that fall in with those themes. And so it's one of those things that they always say, if you see one in there that you really want to tackle with the kids, let us know, and then we'll order enough for the classroom size. Other than that, just keep it on your, if you're just keep the book on your library on the shelf in your classroom. So, I mean, there are books that I do like to do every year just because I love doing them with the students. Is like Of Mice and Men. I love doing Of Mice and Men with the students, and I always get something different out of every group. And they love it. Like for whatever reason, the kids, the kids where I teach, I don't know if it's because of where they are, but they love that book. They connect to it so much. So I don't ever because they get so much out of it and because they put so much into the conversations, I just keep doing that one every year. But other than that, I switch it up. As long as I stay within those themes, I always switch it up.
Are they reading Angela right now?
They are reading it. Yeah, they're gonna. So they have some of them have already. They're finishing up. They have a book club every Saturday morning. Like they have breakfast and they read a book and discuss it, or no, they discuss the book that they've been reading throughout the week. So Angela's up next, but like half of them have already read it, so they've already given me their feedback and whatnot. But they're still going to do it for their next thing. So, and a couple of the other programs in the building are also doing it. Like students at other programs are doing it. So one of the program directors asked if I would come in and meet with the students for one of their book clubs. So that's going to be kind of cool.
Well, just for some context, Rebecca, I don't mean to jump over you, but John Katie has a good friend named Josh Peach who runs Be Awesome. It's a podcast and a charitable institute. So he made a deal that if so many people liked his show, he would donate books to John's job for the kids in there. And I couldn't let that pass up. So I think you ended up with what, 25, 30 books for.
Yeah. So between you, Josh would Be Awesome, and my brother-in-law, like you three all kind of like matched each other. So it was beautiful because it was, the book was inspired by my students. Like they're the reasons I wrote, they're the reasons basically that I wrote the book, and because they never had in the books that they always read, like the fantasy books and whatnot, they never had a protagonist that they could relate to, or someone who looked like them or came from the same environment for them. So that's kind of, they're the inspiration for it. So I couldn't wait to get it into their hands. And Josh and my friend Josh, my other friend Josh rather, and then my brother-in-law, they kind of banded together and made sure that those kids got those books. So it was great.
We'll have to do it again.
That is epic.
Yeah. All right. Sorry, Rebecca.
That's okay. For my students, I end up doing a lot of different books. So at the university where I teach, we often get in visiting writers each semester. And so if it's a good book to teach to like intro creative writing classes, like if it's a story collection or maybe a poetry collection, I will have my classes read that. And it's kind of fun because it's like a big book club. It's like a huge book club, 200 students are all reading this book, across sections and levels. But then I also get to choose like my own, like sort of craft texts. And I'm trying this one out the first time. It's called Writing Speculative Fiction, Creative and Critical Approaches by Eugen Bacon. And I'm excited about that. And then I've got Heather Sellers' Craft of Writing book that I'm going to use. But as far as like individual stories and poems and essays, this semester I am doing all free online resources. So online magazines and journals. And also, if it's not published online, but the author gives me personal permission, to copy a story and hand it out, I'll use that.
Hey, you have Watertower Hills permission to use any of our stories at any point.
Thank you. One book I'm not using it this semester, but I do like to use it, and I've used it multiple times, is a story collection by an author named Sarah Gerkensmeyer, and it's called What You Are Now Enjoying. And it's a really great story collection for my speculative fiction writing class, because we don't just cover like one genre in that class, and that book spans a lot of different types, like magical realism and horror and like kind of weird surrealism and different things. So that's a good one.
That is awesome. Thank you. Now I'm curious about which online sources he's using for his poetry workshop. That
I'm sure we can
that
up with
is
him and he can tell you.
Yeah, I'll put you in touch with James. He'll regale you forever. Regale you.
asked to set one up, but I have utterly no idea. So I told her I would find people that could explain it to me, and then I could try.
We got into showing our poetry in our Watertower Hill family group chat the other day. James, we're about to publish 2 books of poetry for James, and Jenny Topin is in there now, and she's a big poet, and so I'm incredibly terrified of showing my poetry. So I put some of mine in there. So it was really cool because we're all writers, we're all intellectuals, most of us, and I don't count myself in there. But it was really fun because everybody was putting their poetry in poetry, and then you had people like Chris McCauley who put it in Facebook and the group. He's like, "Well, here I got some poems." So I love giving people a platform, even in our small little group, to show off. I love it.
He says you have good poems.
My poetry book I'm putting out is called "I Don't Write Poetry," a collection. Because every time I told people I was writing, I don't know, it like every third question was, "Well, have you ever written poetry?" And until about 4 years ago, I said, "No, I never wrote poetry." And then I just tried it out, and I like it. I studied it, right, in college. You have to study it for my degree that I got, so I studied the heck out of it. I just never tried it out myself.
Ooh. Now that gives me a question that I am now curious about. Who is your favorite poet or favorite poets? Heather.
Oh, that's a big question. I've read poetry my entire life. I don't know if you guys remember the old Childcraft books. We had the old orange ones, and they sat on a shelf in our hallway. And one of them, actually, the first 2 of them, are nothing but poetry. And I was a precocious child. I taught myself to read before I started kindergarten, and I loved to just sit and read those poems as a kid. And I was reading Edgar Allan Poe's poetry when I was still in elementary school. My favorite poets right now, I have a lot that I like. One that I like that not a lot of people know is Sarah Teasdale, and she's an older. I don't even know when, late 1800s, early 1900s poet, but she wrote some beautiful, beautiful poetry. And of course, I love Mary Oliver. I love her style of poetry. It's all very sort of nature centric, which is a big thing for me. I'm trying to think. I like Robert Frost's poems, which makes Josh angry because he hates Robert Frost as a person.
I hate Robert Frost. I got a whole thing about Robert Frost.
Mm-hmm.
His poetry was brilliant, but as a person, he was horrible.
Let's not spend forever on that today, though.
Okay. Rebecca, who's your favorite poets?
Right now, this is my answer. I like a lot of different poetry, but my answer for, if I have to say, my favorite is Edna St. Vincent Millay.
Oh, yes.
She writes like super feminist stuff, but she also writes like some horror-ish poetry. She has one called "I Shall Go Back Again to the Bleak Shore," and it is such a great poem. And so that's what I'm going to say, Edna St. Vincent Millay. I also like Anne Sexton a lot, like her sort of like dark fairy tale-esque poems.
We're so the same person.
I saw Anne Sexton's grave. It was very cool. We were kind of touring a cemetery near Boston and got to see her grave.
That is cool. John?
People leave little trinkets on it, like little tributes, like jewelry and flowers and candles and all kinds of little stuff.
Go to Author's Ridge in Concord. They do that up there.
Okay. Who are your favorites, Sean?
I guess Ginsberg's my favorite. I don't really get into, like, there's certain poems that I love that I just like. I love Howell. But then I'll turn around and I love "Oh, Captain, my Captain." You know, it's one of those like, and I love The Road Not Taken. There's no specific poet I like. There's certain poems that like just speak to me. Like I'm like, I know that sounds like I should be wearing a turtleneck, but no, but like there's certain poems and I'm just like, oh, that was awesome, and I'll read it again right afterwards. Like one of the ones and I can't remember the name. I'm sorry, Heather, but in one of the poems in Echoes of the Dead, just like absolutely floored me, and I messaged her right away, and I'm like, that was amazing. That I'm gonna, and eventually I'm gonna read that one with my students, and now I got to go back and read what the title was of it, but it was awesome. Let me put it this way: it was one of those ones that I read it immediately right afterwards too, and I don't do that for every poem, but it's one of those things. Favorite poet, I guess, if you can count him, Bob Dylan. But other than that, no, I just like random poems. I love there's a handful, maybe even upwards of like a dozen poems that I love, but that I don't necessarily love everything else that poet did.
Yes, poetry should speak to you, with you. Sometimes a poet speaks with me, but yeah.
It's your turn.
Okay.
My wife is probably my favorite poet, only because I wrote a little poem that said, have you ever met a woman who doesn't know how beautiful she is? I think that's how the flowers see themselves. And my wife, in both her beauty and her intellect, I don't think she quite knows how fucking brilliant she is. And I am in awe every time I read. Okay, so going back to the Echoes of the Dead, not only is the poetry just moving and heartrending, but my very first thing I ever read of hers was the story Demons. And I honestly, with no qualification, I wasn't trying to get in her pants or anything. What 100% best thing I've read in 15 years. Easily best thing. It floored me. It shook me. All the emotions, right? So right now, my wife's my favorite poet. But in college and stuff, it was exactly. In college, it was like the Concord writing group, early Americana, Walt Whitman, Thoreau, Hemingway, Hawthorne, Frost. Frost I hate as a person, but his poetry is second to none. In fact, my most popular poem, I wrote a sequel to, A Road Diverged in the Yellow Woods. I wrote a sequel to it as a poem. So yeah, I like the male voice in poetry, but I can't tell you just her funny stuff. She wrote a poem about ghosts taking off the sheets at Halloween that I haven't read anything that brilliant, even studying it in college. So there you go. I'm not trying to win points here. She doesn't know her brilliance.
That is beautiful. And I love the love that you guys have. Okay, we're reaching our hour and a half, but I have 3 questions. I know I promised not to ask the same questions at others' interviews, but these are 3 questions I like to ask all authors who come on my show. First question, are you a coffee or tea? And then what is your favorite brand or flavor? Rebecca.
I want to like tea, but I don't. I like coffee. I drink coffee. And I, like, in a way, I'm a snob, but I'm also like a really basic snob because I just want French vanilla creamer in it, but it can be generic French vanilla creamer. And I don't like coffee shop coffee. So like, I like my cheap at home coffee, but it's got to be certain cheap at home coffee.
What is the certain coffee? What brand?
Oh, like, it can be any, like it. I don't really care about the brand. It's just, I need like a medium roast with some French vanilla creamer and I'm a happy girl.
Alrighty. John.
Coffee and like where we mostly get Starbucks, but my favorite flavor is pumpkin spice coffee. I love pumpkin spice coffee. I'll have it in like July if I could.
You do know how to fix that, right?
How to fix pumpkin spice?
You can buy pumpkin spice from the store or make your own, and then you just add like a little bit to your coffee when you're making it.
Oh.
and then you can have pumpkin spice coffee 360.
Ron's world just exploded. Year round? I can have it year round? What?
Seems like a lot of work.
Does seem like a lot of work.
Actually not. You put a teaspoon beside your coffee pot, and you fix the grounds if you have a big one, and then you put sprinkle a teaspoon over the top of it after you put the coffee in it, put it in, and then you hit power. And no matter what brand you like, it is pumpkin spice. Because I found out they didn't have my cinnamon coffee, and then I found out I could just put some cinnamon over the top of it, and it tastes better than store-bought.
Think about it.
Trying to think if that works with beer as well.
Yes, it does.
I haven't tried beer. Okay, if you want to figure out the beer thing, you're going to have to talk to Zafo from Cursed Dragon Ship Publishing. Ask Zafo. He'll know. I'm not the person to ask about beer, but he does. Okay.
It's our turn.
Go ahead.
Your coffee.
Oh, coffee. So I'm turning into a bit of a health nut. So I study what the benefits of coffee a lot. When I had my own house before I met Heather, I would just make my coffee in my little coffee thing. And in the grounds, I would put cinnamon and cayenne pepper. And then usually just like a sweet creamer. Now my big thing is black coffee with honey is super beneficial, and I'm really digging it. I do like all the sweet creamers, but
Okay, well, I'm an Oklahoma girl, so I should like to drink sweet iced tea, which I did growing up, but then I got to where I was like, God, this is just sugar water. I can't do this anymore. I never drank coffee until Josh and I got married, and then he was like, you should try this. You just got to find the creamer you like, and lo and behold, I do like it. But lately we have discovered, I told him today we ran out and got donuts and coffee.
This is blowing my mind.
And I got an iced vanilla latte, and I was like, I think I'm turning into a basic white girl because I just want like an iced latte and a whatever.
I never liked cold coffee before, but
we like it now.
There's something in that, like we're drinking these things now, and I have to have my coffee so hot you can't put a finger in it. And now I never thought I would like iced coffee. I think
it's gonna be during warm weather we like iced coffee, and then like in the winter we're gonna want hot coffee.
Yeah. Now I don't drink the iced coffee in the morning. It's got to be hot.
Now James just commented and said it's got to be sweet tea. So I will tell you, James, that Josh drinks unsweet tea, even though he's from Texas.
I can't stand
unsweet tea, which my daughter Rebecca calls betrayal juice.
I can't stand sweet tea. I can't.
I don't understand
why. I grew up in an orphanage. We did not
sugar.
have sweet tea. We had unsweet tea with every meal. So I taste sweet tea now, and it's a lie. It's a lie, James. So.
All right.
With that, you make the base coffee the night before, and you put it in the fridge, and then you can make your iced coffee in the morning. I had to figure out how to do that on a budget. Okay, I'm a broke mom.
Yep.
I figured out how to make my own, and
our quick trips around here. I'm sorry.
I want to know what brand of coffee you guys like to get.
I mean, our basic coffee in there is
Columbia
Maxwell House or whatever.
Maxwell.
It's nothing.
I did go through a period when I lived up in New England, and I wrote 2 books up there that I tried all the different stuff, right? All the different stuff. So yeah, I'm with Rebecca. I like my basic at-home coffee. I don't need anything.
Even when we go out, we don't have like a preference. I mean, we'll hit Starbucks or we'll hit the little local coffee shop downtown, or we'll just go to Quick Trip gas station and get it there. We don't care.
Yeah, Quick Trip is
we're not that picky.
Quick Trip has put in a whole nitro bar now. It's hot and cold, and it's really cool.
I'm realizing they probably don't know what Quick Trip is, but it's the very big fancy gas station convenience store down here.
I lived in Georgia for a while, so I know Quick Trips.
Yeah, me too. Like I said, I think I've seen one, but the reason I asked about what your favorite brand is my mother-in-law is all Folgers. My dad is all Maxwell. So that basic disagreement, but they would never tell each other their favorite coffee is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But you guys all are great to learn from, and hopefully more people will give the idea of trying different things as well. I'm not saying you have to. The next question: if you could have either a meal or a coffee date with any character in a book you have written, who would it be? What book is it from, and why? Um, I have no idea who I want to start with. Let's just go around the clock. Rebecca.
So Josh and Heather are going to publish this one, which is part of a trilogy. It's first of a trilogy. But the book is called Beth Bites Back. And Beth is a very, very troubled young lady. But I would like to hang out with Beth.
That is cool.
I don't want to give too much away about her. We'll just say she's a troubled young lady.
She's cool, from what I know of her.
She's very scary, but I feel like we'd get along.
That is awesome. John?
I would say, I would, in my mind, I would like, it'd be cool. Like I'd have coffee with like Angela from Angel of Death, but I think kind of her friend Lucia I would have the coffee with, because she's literally like a gang member who eventually becomes an angel. But it's one of those things where she had all this past where she was doing some pretty, that she was doing gang member stuff. So it's like Angela didn't have that past. So I'd want to get to know like inside like Lucia's head, like what her feelings are towards like this new, going from what she was, a gang member, to being all of a sudden, I'm an angel. Like, something that people would never describe her as, when she was alive. So I'd like to pick her brain on that.
That is so cool. Okay. Josh?
Oh my God. I've had some very interesting characters in my books. John, which one are you on right now? Are you on Tower still?
Yeah.
My character I'd like to have a meal with. Most would want me to say 3, my serial killer, but I think it's really, and you haven't got there yet, John, but probably Creo the Fate Maker, Creo Fairchild in my book 4. He has a power over fate, and they have to literally destroy this kid to make him strong enough to be who they need him to be, because we become stronger in cauldrons of pain and hurt, not happiness and joy. And so they put him through just about everything you can imagine, and he turns on them because of that, and as a human would. So I think Creo, Creo. I want to meal with Ben. Yeah, Ben is me. I put about all of me into Ben from my first book. And funny enough, his love interest Gwen is almost identical to Heather. It's crazy. 4 years before I met her, I wrote that character. But Creo, I think Creo in my series. Yeah.
That makes it my turn. And I'm going to give you the same answer I gave last time we were on the show and you asked me this question. And it's kind of a cheesy, sickeningly sweet answer.
Oh, your grandma.
But in my book, Tales My Grandmother Told Me, which is literally stories based on the stories my grandma Nan used to tell us when we were kids, there is a story in there called Up All Night about a woman who there's a peeping Tom who won't leave her alone. She's a single mom, and the police won't do anything about it. And so she sits up all night with her daddy's old shotgun. And when this guy comes to the window, she shoots him because the police told her this is based on a true story that happened to my grandma. She didn't actually shoot the guy in real life. I kind of embellished that a bit, but she did actually sit up. She did actually shoot down through the floor of her house with her daddy's old shotgun and scared this guy away. But the police had told her she was allowed to shoot him if he was actively getting into her house. So her plan was she was going to shoot him as soon as she saw him at the window and drag him into the house so it looked like he had been in. And in the story, that's what the lady does. But this lady in the story is based on my grandmother, because that's a real story that happened to her. And my grandma Ann and I were very, very close. She loved horror as well. She absolutely fostered my love of horror novels and poetry and books in general. And so I that's just the silliest, cheesiest answer I know. But if I could have my grandma back, who that character is based on, and sit with her for a few hours and talk, I can't think of anybody else I've ever written that I would rather spend time with.
That would be amazing. And the last question I love to ask all authors is, can zombies climb?
Can they climb like stairs or like fences or walls? What are we talking about?
Stairs, fences, walls, anything. Like climb up a ladder if need be. Climb up the stairs. Nope.
No.
I think that's something like anything like that requires thought. I don't think they can do.
Okay. Rebecca?
So I think it's somewhat conditional. I think that they could climb stairs, but I think anything that required any sort of upper body strength, they would fail at, because if they tried to like pull themselves up a tree, that hand would break off. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if they're just sort of like moving their legs to climb stairs, fine. Climbing a tree, no, because the minute you put any weight on their limbs, they're just going to rip apart.
Yep, my answer is along the lines of that. I think true zombies, their bodies are dead and they're decaying. And I think there comes a time, and I like the way The Walking Dead did it. There becomes a time when their bodies are not capable of movement anymore. But I think when they're fresh, I think they can.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. It depends on how long they've been a zombie, because a newly made zombie, I assume their body is still functioning fairly normally. I mean, it certainly makes for a better story if they can do that stuff, right? Because zombies really would be pretty easy to get away from if they're functioning in the way that, you know, their bodies really should in that sort of scenario. They're not going to be fast. They're going to fall apart. They're going to be uncoordinated. But I mean, you're going to have a better zombie story if they can come after you. So,
oh yeah,
you do whatever you want with your zombies, I guess. I don't care.
Yeah, I was about to say, it depends on who the author is.
That's always fun to ask those questions and find out the different people and the different characters. Okay, very last question. Where do you want people to find you? Josh and Heather.
I don't want people to find me.
No. All of our stuff is basically on watertowerhill.com now. So social media, everything, all of our links are on our pages there. So yeah, just send everybody to watertowerhill.com and click all the links.
Oh yeah, and if you click authors, on the authors pictures, you'll find little icons for each of their pages.
Yep, even their old books that we didn't publish, we put links and stuff on there. We're happy to support our people as much as we can.
That is awesome. John?
Actually, he answered it perfectly. So hit my author page on the Watertower Hill page has all of my social media links. So that would be the easiest way to find them. But other than that, like they're all, when you look on Facebook and Twitter or X, whatever it's called now, and Instagram, it's always like John Cady author. But like he said, it's all conveniently right there on that author page. So
okay, cool. Rebecca?
For me, it is my website, RebeccaCuthbert.com.
Okay. I found a link tree with all of those, so I just put all of those from a page they had on Facebook. I hope that's okay, Rebecca.
Absolutely. I've got a link tree and it goes to a bunch of other places. And yeah.
Okay, cool. I'd like to thank you all for being here. And I hope you all have a wonderful night. Where did that video go?